Okay, so you want to own a pet shop, rent a storefront, stock the shelves with dog food and squeaky toys, put a puppy in the window, and watch the neighborhood fall in love with your business. But here is what nobody tells you before that dream takes over. A lean, small pet shop can technically open for under $15,000. You could scrape that together from savings, and yet most independent pet stores are running net profit margins in the single digits, often 3 to 8%, while the big chains down the street are pulling in double that, sometimes more, selling almost the exact same bag of dog food. That is the economics of the pet shop business. Let me remind you, you are opening a low-margin retail grocery store for animals, competing directly against national chains and e-commerce giants who buy inventory at a scale you never will. Pet food alone accounts for roughly half of all pet industry spending, and it's also the category with the thinnest markup and the most price sensitivity, because customers who feed their dog the same brand every month know exactly what it costs at the big box store down the road. The pet shops that survive and actually make money are rarely surviving on bags of kibble. They're surviving on everything layered around the kibble. Pet shop can mean five very different businesses. At the very bottom, an online-only pet supply store can launch for $2,000 to $10,000, mostly covering a website, a small curated inventory, and some initial marketing. A lean, small physical storefront, keeping costs tight and focusing on a niche, can open for under $15,000. A proper specialty or boutique storefront, the kind with real shelving, signage, and a starting inventory that doesn't look half empty on day one, typically runs $50,000 to $80,000. A mid-sized store with a full product range, quality fixtures, and an in-house grooming service built in from day one lands between $100,000 and $200,000. And at the top end, a larger operation with a delivery vehicle, warehouse space, and a broader specialty inventory can require total startup capital, including the cash buffer to survive until break-even, approaching $500,000, with some models projecting a break-even point more than 3 years out. But let me remind you that inventory alone eats 60 to 80% of your total expenses, month after month, for as long as you own the store. This isn't a business where you build it once and the costs taper off. Every single sale you make, you immediately have to go buy more of what you just sold. So you've signed your lease, stocked your shelves, and technically, you are now a pet shop owner. Congratulations. Before your first real customer walks in, you have a set of problems that a normal retail business simply does not have. The first problem is perishability and shelf life. Unlike a clothing store, your inventory doesn't just go out of fashion, it can expire, spoil, or become unsellable. Fresh, frozen, and premium pet foods in particular carry real spoilage risk, and a fridge or freezer failure can wipe out thousands of dollars of stock in a single night. The second problem is live animals, if you choose to carry them. Fish, birds, reptiles, and small mammals require daily care, specialized housing, veterinary relationships, and constant monitoring, and in many places, they come with their own licensing and welfare regulations layered on top of your standard retail business license. A shop that carries live animals isn't just a store anymore. It's also, quietly, a small animal husbandry operation. The third problem is buying power. National chains and big box retailers negotiate wholesale pricing that an independent single-location store simply cannot match. They pay less per unit for the exact same bag of food you're selling, which means their margin on an identical product is structurally higher than yours before either of you sells a single item. The fourth problem is competition from three directions at once. You're competing against big box pet chains on price, against e-commerce subscription services on convenience, and against your own customers' growing habit of just reordering their usual brand online the moment they run low. Foot traffic alone doesn't protect you from any of the three. Let's say you've solved the big problems. You have your lease, your inventory, your fixtures. Now let's talk about what it costs every month, regardless of how many customers walk in. Fixed monthly costs, rent, utilities, and staff salaries commonly start near $15,000 a month even for a mid-sized specialty store before a single bag of food is sold. Add restocking, which never stops because inventory is constantly walking out the door, and your operational burn rate in the early months can be significant even with steady sales. And this is the part that quietly sinks undercapitalized owners. With net margins this thin, A slow month doesn't just mean less profit, it can mean an actual loss because your fixed costs don't move regardless of foot traffic. Monthly revenues for pet stores commonly range anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000 depending on size and location. And at the low end of that range, a shop can be running fixed costs that exceed total revenue. Here is where the pet shop business gets genuinely interesting, because the shops that actually make real money have almost always figured out the same trick. Stop trying to compete on the bag of food and sell something that can't be shipped to someone's front door. Pet food carries a gross margin of roughly 25 to 35%, climbing to as much as 50% on premium and specialty lines. Toys and accessories can run margins as high as 60%. But the real gap opens up in services. Grooming carries gross margins of 60 to 80%. Obedience training classes can yield margins as high as 40 to 50%. These aren't small differences. They're the difference between a business that survives on volume alone and one that actually generates real owner income. Here's the number that changes everything. A shop selling nothing but retail product, competing purely on price against chains with better buying power, is fighting for single-digit net margins for the rest of its life. A shop that layers grooming, training, and boarding on top of that same retail floor is running a completely different business, one where the product on the shelf becomes the reason customers walk in the door, and the service in the back room is the reason the shop actually turns a profit. There are really two types of people who end up owning pet shops, and their businesses look almost nothing alike 5 years in. The first is the pure retailer, someone who opens a store, stocks the shelves, and competes primarily on product selection and customer relationships. This owner is locked into thin, single-digit margins from day one, fighting chains on price with none of their buying power, and their ceiling on income is largely set by how much foot traffic their location can generate. The second is the service-integrated operator, someone who treats the retail floor as a loss leader that builds foot traffic and trust, while grooming, training, boarding, or veterinary partnerships do the actual heavy lifting on profit. This owner's ceiling is much higher because they're not just selling a commodity anyone can buy cheaper online. They're selling expertise, convenience, and trust that a customer can't get from a warehouse 3 states away. Let's run the numbers on a mid-sized specialty pet shop, open for $150,000, with an in-house grooming service built in from day one. The optimistic scenario: the store hits steady monthly revenue of $40,000, split between retail sales and grooming appointments. Blended gross margin, thanks to the grooming service pulling well above retail averages, lands around 35%, generating $14,000 a month in gross profit. After fixed costs of roughly $9,000 a month, you're netting around $5,000 a month, or $60,000 a year. At that pace, you recoup your $150,000 investment in about 2.5 years. The realistic scenario: a big box pet chain opens 8 minutes away 18 months in, undercutting your retail pricing on the exact same top-selling brands. Your retail revenue drops by a third as price-sensitive customers switch over, but your grooming bookings, built on relationships and trust rather than product price, hold steady. Total monthly revenue falls to $28,000. Blended margin actually improves slightly because grooming now makes up a bigger share of the mix, but gross profit still drops to around $10,000 a month. After the same $9,000 in fixed costs, you're netting closer to $1,000 a month, and your payback period stretches well past a decade unless you actively grow the service side to offset the retail losses. The difference between those two outcomes isn't your inventory or your location. It's how much of your revenue depends on a bag of food a customer could buy cheaper somewhere else. Owning a pet shop is not a boutique retail business with loyal customers who never comparison shop. It is a low-margin grocery store for animals, competing against national chains with better buying power and e-commerce platforms with better convenience, wrapped around whatever higher-margin services you're willing to build alongside it. The $15,000 lean storefront and the $500,000 full-service operation are the same business wearing different clothes. A bet that customers will keep choosing your shelf over a cheaper one online, or that they'll come in for the grooming appointment and buy the food while they wait. For the owner who understands that the real product is trust and service, not the bag on the shelf, a pet shop can be a genuinely resilient small business. For the owner who thinks stocking good products is enough to compete, it's an expensive way to discover that the dog food business belongs to whoever can buy it cheapest. And that was never going to be you.